The Hellenistic Age was the period in which Greek culture spread across the known world. Starting at the time of Alexander the Great's death, Greek monarchies were established in Greece, Egypt, and Afghanistan. The period lasted around 300 years until the Romans began to expand their empire, seizing control of the Hellenistic regions. While there are many interesting stories from this era, we have handpicked 5 captivating stories from the lives of some of the most influential Hellenistic rulers for your enjoyment. Number 1. Alexander the Great, 336 to 323 BCE. Although the Hellenistic Age is generally considered to have started after the death of Alexander the Great, we have included him since he was responsible for spreading Greek influence and laying the foundations for the Hellenistic world that would become coveted by the Romans. There are many captivating stories from the life of Alexander, including one in which he meets the queen of the Amazons. According to legend, the Amazons were a band of warrior women who lived in an exclusively female tribe. According to folklore, the women only sought out the company of men when they needed to procreate, and after that, any males, including their own children, were ousted from the tribe. The women were supposedly so committed to their militant lifestyle that they surgically removed one breast for better efficiency when using a bow. In 330 BCE, Alexander reached the Persian region of Hyrcania in modern-day Iran. He quickly dominated the region, securing farmland and pacifying local tribes. According to some of Alexander's biographers, they were at the Hyrcanian border when around 300 Amazonian warriors ambushed them. But far from wanting to engage in battle, the Amazonian queen, Thalestris, wished to engage with Alexander for love, not war. Thalestris declared that since Alexander was clearly the greatest man of his age and she was the greatest woman, they should produce a child together who would become a superior ruler, surpassing the rest of humanity. The couple spent 13 nights together, after which Thalestris returned to her tribe, promising that if the child were a male, he would be sent to Alexander. If female, the baby would remain with the Amazonians. Even at the time, there was a great debate about whether this story was true or if it was the ancient Greek version of Dear Penthouse. Many of Alexander's contemporaries dismissed the tale as pure fantasy, and Greek historian Plutarch recounts a time when King Lysimachus of Thrace was being regaled with the tale only for him to smile and say, "And where was I then?" as he had been on the expedition himself. The story and the existence of the Amazons have largely been dismissed by history. However, in the late 2010s, archaeologists found tombs of female Scythian nomads who were buried with arrowheads, spears, and horse-riding equipment. The age range of the women stretched from their early teens to late 40s, and the oldest woman was buried with a golden ceremonial headdress engraved with floral ornaments. While these women probably didn't come from an all-female society, the discovery proves that there were tribes on the Eurasian steppe in which women rode and fought alongside the men. Perhaps it was the tales of these women that ignited the Greeks' imagination and gave rise to the stories of the legendary Amazon warriors. Number 2. Ptolemy I Soter, 306 to 282 BCE. Ptolemy was one of Alexander the Great's generals, and despite being 10 years older than Alexander, had been Alexander's companion from an early age. After Alexander's death, it was Ptolemy who proposed that the provinces of Alexander's empire should be divided amongst the arguing generals. Ptolemy knew that maintaining the unity of the empire was a lost cause. Ptolemy became the satrap of Egypt while keeping friendly relations with Greece and winning over the Egyptian people. He eventually became the king of Egypt, and his dynasty was one of the most successful of the Hellenistic dynasties that rose after Alexander's death. Perhaps one of the most interesting stories about this member of the Hellenistic royalty came around 2 years after Alexander's death. When Alexander died in 323 BCE, his empire wasn't the only thing being fought over. There was much debate about where his mortal remains should be buried. At first, his embalmed body was held in state in Babylon, where he had died, while craftsmen went about constructing his funeral carriage. The carriage was finally completed in 321 BCE, and it was basically a temple on wheels. A description of it by Diodorus Siculus reads, "On each corner of the vault, on each side, was a golden figure of victory holding a trophy. The colonnade that supported the vault was of gold with Ionic capitals. Within the colonnade was a golden net made of cords the thickness of a finger, which carried 4 long painted tablets, their ends adjoining, each equal in length to a side of the colonnade. Due to the political instability, each of Alexander's succeeding generals wanted Alexander's body entombed in their slice of the empire, lending legitimacy to their rule. After all, Alexander had reached divine status to many and, in death, was worshipped like a god. One seer, Aristander, supposedly prophesied that the land which should receive the body in which his soul first dwelt should be absolutely happy and unvanquishable forever. Although Macedonian kings were traditionally buried in Aigai in the royal tombs, during his lifetime, Alexander had expressed a desire to be buried at the Siwa oasis, where he had received the title of son of Zeus Ammon. In the years following his death, two generals had risen to prominence: Perdiccas, who was acting as regent to Alexander's infant heir, and Ptolemy. Although Ptolemy was supposed to be subordinate to Perdiccas, he behaved more like an independent monarch, executing his deputy, who was pro-Perdiccas, and aggressively expanding his territory. In order for Alexander's body to reach Siwa, it would have to pass through Ptolemy's territory, which Perdiccas knew was a risky move. So he decided to have the body brought to him at Pisidia, where he would have it escorted to the royal tombs in Aigai. Unbeknownst to Perdiccas, Ptolemy was aware of the change of plans and conspired with the Macedon commander in charge of Alexander's body and the governor of Babylon to divert the funeral carriage. The slow-moving hearse headed toward Syria before it changed course and began to progress toward Egypt. As the cumbersome funeral carriage was unable to proceed at top speed, Perdiccas was able to send out a small force to intercept the procession. In the meantime, Ptolemy had amassed his army and rode to Damascus to greet the funeral march. He kept up the pretense that this was all planned by marketing the move as giving Alexander a conquest welcome, but in reality, he was preparing for a fight. According to sources at the time, Ptolemy gained the upper hand when he made a dummy of Alexander and fitted it out with royal clothes and an especially fine shroud. Then he laid it on one of the Persian carriages and constructed a magnificent bier on it with silver, gold, and ivory. Alexander's real body was sent ahead in a simple and ordinary way. Ultimately, Ptolemy won, and Alexander was entombed in Egypt, where he was worshipped and venerated. Today, no one knows the whereabouts of the final resting place of Alexander the Great, and despite centuries of people searching, it has never been found. Number 3. Cassander, 315 to 297 BCE. Cassander had known Alexander since their youth, but the two were not on the best of terms. In one incident, Cassander laughed at the sight of Persians prostrating themselves in front of Alexander, and in response, Alexander smashed Cassander's head into a wall. The vitriol between the two men was such that Cassander was suspected of poisoning Alexander. In the chaos that followed Alexander's death, Cassander fought on the side of his father, Antipater, although he was not named heir after his father died in 319 BCE. Antipater felt that Cassander was too young and inexperienced. As he had not gone through the Macedonian rite of passage of killing a wild boar, he was not allowed to recline at a table, but had to sit upright on his couch into his adulthood. As the Macedonian regent, Antipater had constantly clashed with Alexander's mother, Olympias, and when Cassander became chiliarch, or second-in-command, of Macedon, he continued his father's feud with Olympias. Although all the other warring generals respected Alexander's line, Cassander saw them as standing in the way of his own ambitions. In 316 BCE, he sent soldiers to kill Olympias, and in 310 BCE, he poisoned Alexander's widow, Roxana, and the teenage heir to the empire, Alexander IV. Number 4. Perseus of Macedon, 179 to 168 BCE. Perseus was the last king of Macedonia, and his ambitious nature brought about his downfall. As king, he expanded his influence into Thrace and Illyria and hoped to dominate Greece. His military moves prompted Eumenes II to call on the Romans for help, instigating the Third Macedonian War from 171 to 168 BCE. Although he held off the Romans for 3 years, Perseus was ultimately defeated by Lucius Aemilius Paulus. Legend has it that Perseus had taken refuge in a temple on the island of Samothrace, where the Romans found and captured him. The Romans were hesitant to kill Perseus because he had been seized in a sacred place and therefore had the protection of the gods. Perseus was imprisoned. The Romans hoped he would commit suicide, but after 2 years, the former king of Macedonia was still alive and kicking. The Romans were at a loss as how to dispatch Perseus in a suitable, non-violent manner. They decided to try and kill him through lack of sleep, and after a few weeks of being woken as soon as he nodded off, Perseus died of exhaustion. Number 5. Cleopatra VII, 51 to 30 BCE. Cleopatra was the last of the Hellenistic rulers, and her defeat marked the end of the Hellenistic period and the beginning of the Roman Empire. She was the last in the long line of the Ptolemaic dynasty, and the only pharaoh of her line to learn Egyptian. Cleopatra was educated, intelligent, and interested in science and languages. She could speak at least 9 different languages. When her father died, Cleopatra soon became the dominant ruler over her brother, causing her to have to flee to Syria, where she raised an army and returned to try and win back the throne. With the help of Julius Caesar, Cleopatra ousted one brother and married another brother in order to restore her throne. Despite her intelligence, Cleopatra is perhaps most well known for her theatrics and strategic love life. One legend recounts that she was smuggled in a carpet or linen sack to circumvent her brother's troops and meet Caesar. Another has her arriving in Tarsus aboard a golden barge with purple perfume-soaked sails and made up to look like a goddess in order to win over Mark Antony. Unsurprisingly, both remarkable entrances had the desired effect. Cleopatra was in Rome when Caesar was murdered, and her presence, as well as a gilded statue of her, sparked new fashion trends all over Rome. Supposedly, she loved to party, and along with Mark Antony, would disguise herself and play pranks on the people of Alexandria. Although her ambition brought her to prominence, it also secured her downfall when Caesar's adopted son and heir, Octavian, defeated her and Mark Antony. To learn more about the lives of Hellenistic royalty, check out our book, The Hellenistic Age, a captivating guide to an era of Mediterranean history that took place between the death of Alexander the Great and the rise of the Roman Empire. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.